Hi, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be you, because here we're going to explain and explore various techniques, activities that will make it easier for you to innovate, to create, to make transformative decisions, to enrich the way you live, the way you work, the way you play in our state. That's the whole purpose of this show. Now, in the last month, our governor appeared 3 times in 3 presentations. One was the State of the State. One was where he emphasized his budget. And the other one, he made a presentation to Medicare and Rutland. 6 times during those presentations, 6 times, he said that our demographic problem, the problem that we're not keeping our youth, the problem that our youth is leaving, and all the repercussions of that, okay? He talked about 6 times, he mentioned that it's not a problem, it's a crisis. He called it a crisis. Now, when I saw that, I listened to his presentation of the State of the State, and I'm looking at a problem, what he calls a crisis, that is really not, that has been around for a long time. And I looked at his plan, and there was no plan. There was some extra money, some encouragement of what was going to be, and some tactical things that the state is doing, the various towns, but no plan, no what I call mobilization. If you're going to deal with a crisis, you must mobilize. And there are strategies for mobilization, steps and strategies. The basic strategy is when you mobilize is you give an identity to responsibility, an organization the responsibility who has political capital and the responsibility to get the job done. You train people. You train people in creative thinking, because that's the kind of thinking that's going to solve this crisis. And then you have you communicate a palatable passion to get the job done. Let me give you an example. When Irene struck us, devastated our state, what did? We mobilized, we organized, we got together, we trained people, we did things that we had resources, we applied resources, and in a short time, we were able to solve the problem and get back to normal. That's mobilizing. When 9/11 hit the country, what did? We mobilized. We advertised a palatable passion that we had to get this done. We've been attacked. We started a new organization. We had resources. Okay, we got it done. And I feel safer today because of the Homeland Security and so forth. I do feel safer. In the Second World War, now, I'm not saying that our crisis is as proportionate to the Second World War, but it is proportional. Okay, it is a crisis, and you cannot deal with a crisis unless you mobilize. Now, talking about the Second World War, talking about mobilization. At one point in time, we were manufacturing, as a part of our mobilization, we were manufacturing 4,000 tanks a month. Germany, who was our enemy at that time, was manufacturing 4,000 tanks a year. We overwhelmed them because of mobilization. When Russia beat us in space, another opportunity. We beat us in space. What do? Several years later, we put men on the moon because we mobilized. Now, I'm going to talk about mobilization more, what I did, and I created a paper, a pathway, which I think is a plan, and I sent it to legislators, and I'll explain that a little later in the show. But just think about these techniques that I'm showing now, like that can help us solve this problem that is a crisis. Now, let's get to my dioramas. You know how it works. I'll tell you a story, what inspired me about this diorama, what I wanted to depict. I might tell you about how I did it, how I made it, and so forth. The purpose of that, telling you the story, is that I'm stimulating neurons in your brain, your right brain and your left brain also, neurons that are going to, that you're going to use creative ideas. Now, what happens is when you have neurons excited, and so forth like that, and I'm adding data to your right hemisphere. What you're doing is you're assimilating data, and in data, you'll see new relationships. And new relationships are what creativity is. And if you have these new relationships and data, what you're going to find out is that you're going to make better decisions, more creative decisions. That's how it works. Now let's go to the first one. Now the first one I call trillions. It's amazing that nobody sees them, but we are filled, covered head to toe, inside and outside, with trillions of microorganisms, live organisms that are, they could be fungi, they could be bacteria, that's what they are, but we're covered with them. Now 92% of them is in our gut. Okay, but a lot of it is in our ears, in our belly buttons, in our eyes, in our mouth, wherever there's moisture. Now, most of these organisms are symbiotic, meaning that we're living, they help us live, they enrich our immune system, they deal with our inflammation. Most of them are helpful to us, thank God. But some will kill you, obviously, okay? Now, what's interesting is that recently, science has shown that if they transplant good bacteria, good gut bacteria, these organisms, into a sick person, they get positive results. Isn't that amazing? They're actually now beginning to deal with it. It's right at the beginning, FDA is involved. It's not current, but it's happening now. What they're doing is they're actually transplanting this different combinations of this bacteria, these organisms, into sick people, and they're finding that the results are amazing. It's interesting. I thought that was interesting. Now, let me get to the Geppetto moment. You know that moment where we talk about a specific technique or a specific methodology that'll help you make it easier to create better ideas, to create transformative ideas. Now, this one is a simple one. It's coffee. Now, let me explain. There are two scientific studies, a little controversial. One scientific study says that when you're deciding to make a decision and you want to be creative and you want to make a good decision, drink coffee, because what it does, it helps you concentrate. It eliminates distractions. Interesting. Now, there's another piece of study that says the exact opposite. It says, no, don't drink coffee, because the coffee, the concentration, inhibits the ability of your brain to be free-flowing, where free-flowing, free associations, free relationships, which is the creative process. I tried both. I don't see any real difference for me, but it may be for you, so put it in your toolbox. Actually, for me, I find it better not to drink coffee. Let my mind flow and see new relationships. That's the Geppetto moment for that particular piece. Now, let's go to the second piece. This is a more serious piece that I created, and I want to tell you the story about it, stimulate your own mind, and to make you aware of something that's kind of terrible. I call it 2060. Every 60 seconds of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, every year, 20 women are assaulted, kicked, punched, killed, knifed, scalded, thrown out windows. Yes, assaulted. Violence against women. Now, the real sad part of that statistic is it's not by robbers, it's not by people who break into the house, it's not by serial killers, it's by the violence is perpetrated by people who they love, who love them, supposedly, who love these women, or at least like them. Their fathers, their brothers, their cousins, their husbands, their partners. These are the people that are put in violence. And if you do the math, it's amazingly bad, because if you do the math, you find that 10 million women a year are assaulted in this way. Is that terrible? No. I did this piece to remind myself that there'd be no case will ever attack a woman in a violent way. And I did the piece also to remind everybody else that this is a statistic that we have to get rid of. Now, if you know anybody that is likely to beat up on women, get help. And if you have that problem, get help. We cannot allow this to continue. You can't do it. Now, what is the Geppetto moment? What is the method or the activity that will help you easier to make creative decisions? This particular one is carbohydrates. Now, what does that mean? Picture we go to a seminar and we're going to learn things and make decisions that are going to help our life and our business, whatever case. Or we go to work and we sit down at a meeting, and that meeting, and we want to discuss positive ideas, our profitability, things that are going to help our business, and we can do it at home. on financial decisions. Whatever you make decisions. What do we do when we ever make decisions? One thing we do is we have refreshments. Now in the morning, if it's a breakfast meeting, early morning, we have juices and we have fat donuts and eclairs and things, real carbohydrates, real lot of calories. And if it's a lunchtime, then we have fatty meats and sugary sodas. Now, here's the problem. That food actually takes away energy and oxygen from your brain. Here you are in an environment or in a place where you're going to have to try to make positive, creative decisions. And what you're doing is depleting the ability of your brain by eating these foods, depleting the quality of your brain that's going to be creative. That's what you're doing. Stop. It doesn't make any sense. Have proteins, proteins, juices, peanuts, you know what it is. But don't eat these carbohydrates, because at the time you're making these kind of decisions, you're not helping the brain make these decisions. And we need good decisions. We need them. Now, not only, if you do this, not only will you probably make better decisions, but you most likely will live longer. Yes. Now let's go to the third one. The third one I call the KISS. Now, it came out of the same research I did when I was researching the microorganisms in our body and external to our body also. Now, there's a lot of flora, a lot of organisms in our mouth, okay? And obviously we do a lot of kissing, but as I explored this idea, I found that kissing is a general activity, but every time we do it, it has different meanings. It has wonderfully different meanings. For example, first I made a joke to myself. I said, where did kissing start? I said, well, probably it started in paradise, in Eden. Two naked people standing around with nothing to do, everything's fun, they kiss. It's a joke, bad joke, but it's a joke. But in the same vein, you have the kiss of betrayal. Judas betraying Jesus. That's different. Now you have another example, you have the politician kissing babies. Why he does it, I have no idea. Does it demonstrate his leadership? I don't know, but that's his meaning. Then we have the kiss, that's the passage, the rite of passage, making out. At least when I was a young kid, we did a lot of kissing. It was wonderful, but that was the meaning, it was a rite of passage. Then you have the passionate kiss. Yeah, yes, without passionate kissing, you would not have foreplay, you would not have population, you have to have that. And then there's the goodnight kiss, right? The goodnight kiss could mean, come in, stay, I had such a wonderful time, Charlie, come on in and stay, or please call me tomorrow and we'll go out again. Or it could mean, if you call me again, I'm going to call the police. Different meanings. Now, the last meaning, interesting about it, is that the Romans, 2,000 years ago, loved kissing. They put statues, they made statues, they wrote literature, they wrote drama, they loved kissing. So did the Hindus of India, 3,500 years ago. They wrote about it in their Vedas, their sacred documents, and they wrote plays and so forth about it also. So that was in the past. Now here's the interesting fact about kissing. Today, a scientific study was done on 160 different cultures, 160. And they found that more than half of those cultures, more than half, actually did not kiss. They thought it was dirty, and they thought it was silly, and they didn't do it. Now, for me, that's their loss. That's their loss. But it's interesting that they find kissing not the thing to do. Now, the last thing about kissing is, the flora, the microorganisms that we have in our bodies are very different. They're like fingerprints. Between you and I and 1,000 other people, each composition of that bacteria is different than anybody else. Except if you have a partner and you're kissing that partner a lot, the mouth flora, the mouth organisms have a tendency to become the same. They become the same combinations, which is interesting to me in the sense that our microorganisms, these germs, this bacteria in our body, actually know before we do when we're going to come together. An idea. Now, what is the Geppetto moment, the activity that you can put in your toolbox? This is a simple one. Recorded stories, recorded book. Now you can get a recorded book, many books, myriad of books, on your phone. So now you can add data to your brain, while you're working out, while you're driving a car, while you're doing other things. The more data that you add to your brain, the more it can mix and match, the more combinations and relationships that it will see, you'll see, and you will use those relationships to make better decisions. We have to make better decisions, creative decisions, transformative decisions to deal with the problems that we're going to have in Vermont now. Let's go back again. Let's go back to the problem of our population. We're getting older, and while youth is leaving and no youth is staying, and it has dire economic repercussions in the future. And the only way to deal with it, in my opinion, we have to mobilize for the crisis that the governor called it, a crisis. Now, what I did is I wrote a paper. I did a little research in mobilization, and I recommend that you do it. Look up, just Google mobilization and see the steps it takes, the rules that it takes in order to deal with a crisis and end the crisis. I wrote this paper, and I sent it with this show, which I do every month. Every month I send this show to all the legislators in Vermont because I'm trying to share with the whole state the idea that using these techniques, we can solve our problems. Attached to that email that I sent was a document. I wrote down about 20 steps based on my research about how we can mobilize. Steps how we can mobilize. Utilizing the idea of training, utilizing sexual authority, and this palatable passion. Now I sent it to them, I'll send it to you. If you just send me an email, I'll send it to you because maybe you can deal with, maybe you can distribute it better. We have to do something about this problem, and it's not being done. Some things are being done, but we're not mobilizing. The only way, like the cases I showed you, the only way we have to practice mobilization. That's the only way to do it. Now, talking about transformative thinking and so forth, today we have a special guest. You remember Uncle Dave? I think he was on radio here for 11 years. Well, Uncle Dave is with us today because he represents, I think he owns it, WEXP. This is a non-profit radio station, which is now on the air, EXP. And it's going to be helpful to the community. It's going to deal with the community news. It has music and so forth. But we're going to talk to Dave about where he got the idea, what's the unmet need, and how it's going to actually help us maybe make better decisions. Well, so today, right now, let's welcome Uncle Dave. As I said, we're going to be interviewing Uncle Dave. Don't forget, this show is all about innovation and transformation, and here's a man who's going to be talking about a new radio station that I consider very transformative. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Not bad, Louis. How you doing?
Dave, I want to hear about the new show, this new nonprofit show, but tell me a little bit about your background, just quickly.
Well, I've been in radio for about 32 years,
Oh.
and I started out when I was in school.
12.
Well, school at the University of Alabama. And it was a great experience, and it was something that just kept opening its door to me, so I ended up continuing to do it. And over the last 29 years, I've hosted a Grateful Dead show that has been successful. It's on around the country. We'll be having that on Saturday nights, actually. And I worked as a show producer for 19 years in public radio on WNCW. That's down in North Carolina. Really have enjoyed doing radio for a very long time.
Yeah.
And when I came here, it was primarily for work. Was on the air here for 11 years in the market, and I've lived here 13 years. And I really love it here. I've lived here longer than any place I've ever been. And in the end, I married a great girl who's from here. It's just home. It's got everything I wanted. I came here with certain goals too. I have a great place. I get to coach football. I have pretty much everything I want, and the station really was the culmination of those dreams, being able to put something together that I get to do what I love, but I get to benefit the community I live in as well.
You're going to put it together. Did you see it as filling an unmet need?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that prompted? What is that unmet need?
Well, the unmet need, I think, radio can do so many things. So I'm believing that we can accomplish a lot of different goals with this radio station, and those range from bringing the Rutland and Killington communities together more, particularly their economic communities. You've got a lot of families that live here, or rather that come and stay here in Rutland, who do their skiing up in Killington.
Yeah.
Well, they need to know that they haven't really experienced Vermont until they've gone and experienced the farmers market, or they've spent time on Center Street, or until they've, been a part of Rutland, because that's a part of the whole Vermont experience. But then also when you think about other needs, like promotion of small business here, leveling the playing field with underwriting and sponsorships that different businesses can afford, that's a big plus here, because you want to see Rutland small business develop and flourish, because that's really what Vermont is.
Absolutely. I've been listening to the music, and the music is eclectic. I just love the music, all the way from the 50s to folk music. It's wonderful. But what's some of your ideas for the programming? How are you going to make this contribution to the community? How are we going to enrich downtown, whatever the case might be?
Well, I think being a sounding board for a lot of 501c3s, having the Parent-Child Center, having the United Way, having different organizations be able to come on and just let people know that they're there. So often you have great organizations in town, but without a sounding board, without a way to let everyone know that they exist, their efforts fall by the wayside. We want to be there to be able to let people know, hey, we're spending 5 good minutes with Caprice Hoover from United Way. What have you got going on? How is your organization working to benefit the community? And if we let people know these things, all of a sudden we're allowing for the community to have access to opportunities that can better the lives of everyone here.
So the programming is music. You're going to have these interviews with these various organizations, these nonprofit organizations and so forth. What else?
Well, we're also entering into a program with the Rutland City Schools. David Walk had a great, I love quoting him on this. He says, our radio station is dropout prevention. And we had an interest meeting.
Dropout prevention.
Well, yeah, because we have interns from the high school and Stafford Tech. And when we had an interest meeting with the folks at the high school and Stafford Tech, we expected maybe 8, 10 kids show up. We had 40 show up. 40 kids. Radio's not dead. And the kids here are definitely looking for ownership of something. And what I saw was a bunch of kids who come from all walks of life, different backgrounds, some from Fairhaven High School, some from Mill River, some from Rutland High School. That's the thing. Stafford Tech serves all those. So it's a great way to connect with that.
The impacting on the kids is very important, because our governor just said on 3 occasions that our population getting older and our kids leaving and no kids coming in is a crisis. Now, how are you going, that idea of impacting the children, how's it going to?
Well, you give kids ownership of something. So many kids these days, they go through life and they feel like, okay, I'm here until I can get out. And if you give kids something that they feel like, wow, that really made an impact on me. I felt like I had ownership of something, like I had control of something that I got to work with and fell in love with.
Are you giving them their own programming?
Well, yeah. Well, what we're doing is we're allowing them the opportunity. They'll all go on the air, and we'll work with them, in a kind of a progressive state where they get the opportunity to end up being live on the air. They won't start out live. We'll use them in an overnight capacity with a voice tracking thing we have that allows for them to be able to develop their skills. Kids these days, they don't get opportunities to fail. And what we want is we want them to be in an environment where they can sit there, they can fail a little bit, but be able to re-record that, realize why, and teach them the art of radio.
It's an internship, part of an internship to teach them radio?
Yeah, we'll teach them radio, and we'll teach them every aspect. And that was the cool thing, Louis. You had kids there who, not everybody wanted to go on the air. Some kids wanted to do social media. Some kids want to learn how to run a board with a band in front of them. Right. Some kids want to learn how to run a stage. We got one kid, he's going to come in, he wants to learn how to produce spots and so forth, be able to do that production side of things, but he also wants to learn to work with nonprofits. And it's because he's been a part of a suicide prevention program here that's had a lot of great success. And when you see kids wanting to, better themselves by going out in the community, realize those kids are going to be running things one of these days. The more we develop them to be leaders now and give them a good foot, to start off with.
You're responding to a very critical problem.
Yeah.
And if we don't solve this problem, we're going to have some very dire economic background. But let me ask you something. You're going to have them on, you're teaching them as an internship. Are they going to do programming?
Yeah,
are
they're going to do
have
some
themes?
Well, we're going to be meeting with them. We're going to be talking with them. We're going to be learning from them as much as they're learning from us. And I think one big thing too, I think the days of having the show where you're on for an hour saying, hey, call me up and let's talk about whatever. I don't know if that necessarily is in vogue anymore. I think people like programming that keeps their interest, but also that doesn't, take up too much of their time. So a 5-minute vignette kind of done in that NPR vein, these kids are talented, and you put a camera in their hands, you put some mics in their hands, you tell them, okay, let's go out and let's capture a specific thing that the Parent and Child Center does. Let's go see what happens with this organization, with the Rutland Eagles, and do a story on that. And then, we've got, because that's the thing, Louis, we're not just doing radio here. We are going to be approaching this from the standpoint of having a YouTube channel, of having live music in the building. We have a music room that's great for that. Right. Not to mention different, programs that are produced by the kids that allow for you to be able to, maybe embrace Rutland a little bit more.
Is it an incubator for broadcasting?
Oh, absolutely.
For young kids?
Yeah, because this kids can build a portfolio. Hey, if you want to go to a really good communications school, if you've got a portfolio going in, all that does is A, better your chances of getting in, and B, lift where you might be. It might be a thing.
So obviously you got already people interested in doing all this. The incubator of broadcasting, that's right on the button of trying to keep our kids here.
Well, I think
bringing
kids back.
Yes.
They might be able to say, I could do this at home, and there's no place like home. Hey, I've stayed here in Vermont because there's no place like Vermont. The life that I get to live here, the life that we have in Vermont is unique and special. There are so many places that don't have the opportunity to live like we live in Vermont because that style of living in society has been erased out because of sprawl or because of whatever reason. We live in one of the best places that you could possibly live in the U.S. Why not, be positive about it with a radio station, with the students, with the community, and give the community some ownership of something too.
It's transformative. What's the last words about it, Dave?
I think the biggest thing is when we have events, when you see the kids working out there to do stuff and you see the station is going to be someplace, come support it and support local music because that's really a big part of this too. There are so many ways that we can be a positive catalyst for change in Rutland County. And I haven't even talked about our live broadcast from the farmers market on Saturdays, not to mention working with those farmers and those local merchants that will help them get their message out. It's so important to develop the economy here and to give people a positive take on where they live.
I'm hoping you come back, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This is the Geppetto Room. You just heard, I think, something that's very transformative, and this whole show is about being transformative. I'm Lou Scott. This is Geppetto Room. Until next time.
Thanks, Louis.